What is up, awesome peeps? Brent McCluskey here with Electrified Reviews, and today we are going to be talking about how to commute with electric skateboard. The board we'll be talking about today, or the board I'll be using today, is the Evolve Bamboo GT Street or something like that. We've had a couple boards from Evolve. They're fantastic boards, and that's the board that we recommend you guys use for commuting if you're going to actually be using an electric skateboard to commute. There's a lot of reasons for that. We'll dive into that here in a minute. You don't have to use an Evolve board. You can use any electric skateboard you want, but over the years we've been able to test quite a few different brands here for electric skateboards, and this is really the only brand that we've been able to put thousands of miles on without having an issue. And if you're going to be commuting, then you're going to be putting lots of miles on your board, right? So you want something that's going to have enough power, have enough range, have enough speed, but most of all, it's going to have reliability. That's really why we choose, the Evolve boards here. This one, what is this called again? This is the Bamboo, the Evolve Carbon, or the Evolve Bamboo. They've got a carbon one too, which is super dope. That was the first board that we tested a while back. It was the carbon board. That deck is a lot more stiffer, so this one's got a lot more flex to it because it's got the bamboo deck. It's kind of more enjoyable to ride. Honestly, it's probably a better commuting electric skateboard than the carbon, even though personally I think the carbon skateboard looks cooler. But this board has 3,000 watts of power total. It's a very, very, very powerful board. It's got a 30-mile range on this battery, which is incredible. And you could probably even go a little bit further than that if you want to be very careful with the battery. If you want to go maybe 12 miles per hour or something like that. If you want to go slow, you can really extend the range on this, depending on what level of power you're in on the remote here. But 30 miles of range, and that's like a lot of times when companies estimate range, it's kind of like an overestimate. The 30-mile range on that's a true 30-mile range. If you're going up really steep hills, if you're going full blast the entire time, the max range is probably going to be around 20 miles. But if you ride it conservatively at all, 30 miles is really, really realistic for this board right here. And that's important because that's going to be one of the key factors for commuting electric skateboard, right? If you're going to be going long distances on electric skateboard, there's going to be a couple components that you have to have. You've got to have the range. 30 miles, that's plenty of range. You've got to have the speed. This board goes 24 miles per hour, and you've got to have the power. This board has 3,000 watts of power, like we were saying, and one of the concerns that I had when I first started riding electric skateboards was, can electric skateboard, can it really be used as a commuter? And my biggest concern was the power. Like could it climb steep hills like electric bike could? And honestly, I just didn't think it could do it. I was quickly proven wrong though when I first started trying the Evolve boards. They do have quite a bit of power, and to show you guys just how powerful these boards are, I'm gonna show you a clip right here of me tearing up one of the steepest hills in our area. This is kind of like a San Francisco style hill. It's pretty steep. And you can see it cruises up this thing. I don't know how steep it is, like what degree, but it's pretty steep. Like it would really wind you to walk on this thing, but this board just kind of cruises up it really without much of a problem.
Hope you find me. I'll be back home soon. When the sun rises, when the sun
let's kind of dive into the tips here. I've talked about the board enough, but I want to talk about some of the tips that I've learned along the way to help make your electric skateboarding commute, more enjoyable and kind of more realistic and just kind of easier to do. And the first thing I want to say is to pack a bag or to bring supplies. Tip number one is bring supplies. And there's a couple of things that you definitely want to bring with you. I typically wear a backpack with me, and I've got several things. I've got my charger for the electric skateboard. I have a charger for the remote. I have a truck tuning key, and I have like a little multi-tool or like an Allen wrench set. And here's the reasons why I have each of those tools. So the truck key, like to loosen or tighten the truck, you really want to have that because sometimes you just need to tighten the trucks a little bit. Sometimes you just want to loosen the trucks a little bit, and having that tool with you, it just makes it a lot easier, especially if you are going for longer rides. Like let's say you're going for a 15, 20 mile ride, you might want to do that at some point. So you definitely want to bring that. As far as the chargers go, it's like the charger for the board, it only weighs like 1.5 pounds. It's not very light. If you've got a backpack with you, I would just say throw it in there, because if you are going for a super long commute, like the chances of you needing that charger are very, very low. But wouldn't it be nice if you did need it and you had it with you? You could just stop at a Starbucks or like a Pete's Coffee or something, plug it in for like 20 minutes, and then you've got probably enough juice to get home. I also say bring the charger for the remote with you, because I have had it where the remote dies and then you're like, what are you gonna do, right? Then you gotta pump this thing back home because you can't, how are you gonna charge the remote without the cable? Now, if you do have the cable with you, this board, the Evolve board, actually has 2 USB slots underneath it, so you can plug it right into the board and charge the remote from the board. You can also charge your phone from the board, this board, or like other accessories, whatever you want. So that's kind of a cool little feature of this particular board right here. I think there's some other skateboards that have it out there, but yeah. All right, tip number 2, awesome peeps, is going to be protective gear. You guys have to decide really how much protective gear you want to use, but you want to be wearing at the very least a helmet. You might want to consider wrist guards. You might want to consider knee guards. Just kind of, just stuff to make sure that you're okay if you do fall on this thing. And also shoes really, really matter for this. So like right now I'm wearing just tennis shoes, right? Nothing super fancy. I think these are just Nikes, but the reason I wear these instead of, something else is they've got pretty good support in these shoes. They've got good grip, and they cling pretty tightly to my feet. And when you commute on like a skateboard, the shoes really matter, because the longer you go, your feet have a tendency to start falling asleep. And that makes it more difficult to feel the road, makes it more difficult to actually skate and to kind of stay in control. So like don't wear, if you're gonna be commuting long distances, like I would say don't wear flip-flops, don't wear Crocs. Like you want like a full, closed toe shoe, like a tennis shoe, something that's gonna give you tons of support, you know what I'm saying? All right, tip number 3, know thy board, right? Okay. So basically, you should know your board, whichever one you choose. You need to know that thing like the back of your hand. You need to know exactly how hard it accelerates. You need to know exactly how hard it brakes. Like, what is the threshold of braking? Like, what's your minimum stopping distance if you have to emergency brake? And the reason I say that is because if you do get into an emergency situation, you don't want to be like, oh man, can I make this stop? Like, you really need to know in the back of your mind, like in your subconscious, like deeply rooted in there, like you need to know exactly what the parameters of your board are. And the only way to do that is to get out and ride it as much as you can. When I first started riding this, when I first started commuting on electric skateboards, I could only go like 5 or 6 miles. And then through time, like I can go about 15 or 16 miles or so now, and my legs are fine. Like typically I had issues with cramping, my calves would cramp, my feet would fall asleep, and you just kind of get used to it. And one of the ways to really get to know your board is to obviously get out there and ride it, but to ride it on conditions that are less than ideal. So if you've got like your favorite roads and stuff, like go on roads that are not as nice, go on roads with chipped asphalt, go on roads with some extra pebbles on there. And the reason I say that is because if you are on like a perfect road and you have like maybe a random rough patch or like some unexpected change in the terrain, if you are familiar with that in your mind, if your mind and body already has a connection of like how to ride that type of terrain, you're more likely to not fall, skid out, and crash and like get seriously hurt. It's kind of like whenever you get a new car, like I think kind of a good idea is to find like a nice open parking lot and do some donuts with it. Like just figure out like where do the tires break when you turn hard, that kind of stuff. Just so when if you do get into an emergency situation, you know your board, you know how it's gonna react in different environments. So yeah, know thy board. All right, and for tip number 4, we're going to say know your roads, okay? So what I mean by that is if you're gonna be commuting on an electric skateboard, if you're gonna be commuting on anything, you're typically taking the same paths, right? You probably have like a primary route, and if that route has traffic or something weird or whatever, you've got like a secondary route that you are probably pretty familiar with. So you should know your roads so well that you should be able to be like, oh yeah, on the corner of like Sunset and Park, there's like this little weird patch. There's like kind of like an oil spill from like maybe a truck sat there too long. Oh yeah, and if you go down Whitney for like 3/4 of a mile after sunset, the road kind of gets a little crumbly. Like you should be able to describe your path really, really well. And the reason I say that is you can basically know how fast you need to go, and you can also know what kind of stuff to avoid, basically just to increase your safety. Because one of the things about riding an electric skateboard or commuting with it versus commuting with a electric bike, electric scooter is it's kind of an earned experience, guys. Like it requires a lot more skill. There's a lot more that goes into it to ride it safely, or even to do it at all. Like I could ride most people could ride 15 miles on an e-bike, boom, like that. But to ride 15 miles on an electric skateboard, like that takes a little bit of time to kind of work up to that, to get your, I don't know, just to get everything synchronized, man, to get your like brain and your body synchronized with the carving and all that stuff. So yeah, anyways, okay, moving on to the next tip. Build up to it. So basically, we just talked about, going 5 miles versus going 15 miles. You don't want to start out, if you got like this really long commute ahead of you, I mean, you really don't want to start out doing that whole like 15, 20 mile stretch there and then, charging up and going 20 miles back. It's just, if you go too far too fast, you are inevitably going to get shakes in your legs. Your muscles will get sore, they'll get weak, and they'll get shaky. And what happens is those shakes translate down to your feet, into your board, and you get wobbles, man, and you get really unstable. And that is a recipe for disaster, lickety split. So I really think it's a good idea to build up to longer commutes. And again, the only way to do that is to just keep going out and ride, keep going out and pushing, going further, going faster, exploring new roads, getting used to different terrain, stuff like that. One more tip, carving. Carving can be your best friend. When you're going long distances, if you start getting calf cramps, because that will happen to you inevitably, 10 miles in, 15 miles in, 20, at some point your calves are gonna start cramping. If you haven't figured this out already by those kind of distances, carving can be your best friend. So basically you don't want to ride in a straight line the whole time. You want to be carving back and forth a little bit. And it just helps change like what muscles you're using to support yourself, and it kind of keeps your calves from cramping up. So yeah, carving is your best friend. All right, look, awesome peeps, that is it. Basically this video was just to show you that, look, electric skateboards are really a viable way to commute. However, it is definitely different than an electric bike or an electric scooter. They're not as easy to ride. It's an earned experience. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes skill, and you really got to work for it to be able to do it. So it's absolutely doable. I just think you kind of got to follow those steps like we're talking about. And if there's anything else that you guys can think of, any other tips from you guys who have ridden, tons on your skateboards, let us know what else that we should be thinking about. What else should we be talking about to help newcomers that are here trying to figure out how to commute on your skateboard? Leave that stuff in the comments. Let's talk about it. And yeah, I think that's just about it. So I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. It's beautiful out here in California. I hope you guys are staying safe, social distancing, 6 feet, gloves, masks if you got them, all that kind of stuff. But just stay well, stay safe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.